Hi, I'm Kevin from the Awareness.website, and in this video, Energetic Enigmas, we're going to share some stories. And energetic enigmas, you've probably had all kinds of different things that are hard to explain or kind of makes you wonder, things that make you go, So we're going to share some stories. Some of them are personal stories, some of them are stories about different things that I've seen along the way. And really, these stories are about helping you to expand your awareness and your understanding of some of the energetic ideas that are involved with Tai Chi and some of what Mr. Moy was trying to teach us beyond the Tai Chi. Mr. Moy's lineage was from the northern branch of the School of Complete Reality, which was founded quite a while ago by some very prominent figures in Taoist history. But recently, and by that I mean in the last few hundred years, there's been a movement in this lineage to try and simplify and illuminate some of the teachings of these classic books. So books like Triplex Unity and Understanding Reality and many others. There's something like 2,500 volumes in the Taoist canon. And so what these monks have been trying to do is reveal some of the deeper aspects of reality and to kind of debunk some of the elaborate techniques and methodologies that they would talk about in these books, which you would need incredible amounts of learning and very specialized information and knowledge to understand what they were talking about and how to sort of decode the language. One of the things Mr. Moy had said was no dogma. He wanted people to look beyond the dogma, and even though he founded the Feng Lagok temple of Taoism, he didn't want people to have a dogmatic view of their Tai Chi and their practice. And I remember one time he was saying that once things open up, once things in the body open up, the techniques and stuff don't work anymore. And now at the time I thought he was talking about, things like push hands and martial applications and that, but no, he was talking about something more. And my observations of Mr. Moy and the things that I observed him as he was teaching were confirmed when recently I read a book called Practical Taoism, which was translated by a fellow named Thomas Cleary. And this book was written by a 7th generation monk in the lineage of the northern branch of the School of Complete Reality. And he was known as the Preserver of Truth. And in this book they talk about some very interesting things, and they explain a lot of the terms and terminology and how a lot of that has caused people to become misled, and lots of schools of Taoism and whatnot have sort of gone off in sort of strange tangents. And one of the things that I thought was really important is with all these techniques that people use to play around with their energy and whatnot, is one of the things that they talked about is that the human mind cannot manage the natural flow of energies that goes on in the body. It's something that happens that the mind will simply just interfere with if we start trying to do things that are unnatural. So in this book they talk about how to go about simplifying that, sort of getting away from all those techniques and whatnot. And to talk about the mental aspect of Tai Chi, before I started Tai Chi, I used to be into the martial arts, and my view of Tai Chi was that it was for old people, and with my martial arts friends, Tai Chi was pretty useless in terms of fighting or any of that kind of stuff. And so my first introduction to Tai Chi, I was working with a fellow, his nickname was Bear, and we were working at this place where we washed mud. And I used to go out in the back warehouse and I'd be stretching and doing some kicks and all that kind of stuff, with the kickboxing. he would come out and he would watch, and oh yeah, that's kind of interesting. And I knew he was a Tai Chi teacher. Of course, it didn't mean a whole lot to me then. And so one night he comes up to me and says, "Hey Kevin, I want to show you something." And I said, "Oh, okay." So he takes his hands and he puts them in this grassbird's tail position. And he puts it up against my chest. We're just standing there like this. And he says, "Okay, you ready?" And I said, "For what?" And he just goes, boom. And I flew up, way up in the air, up against the lockers. I come back down and I says, "I got to learn this stuff." And so then I started Tai Chi. Now the interesting thing was that my mind had all these ideas, and that limited my view of what Tai Chi was. But my body was open enough that I responded to what was going on, and I was able to handle that push that he had. And as I started practicing, the movements came very easy to me. My body, like I said, was able to respond and was open enough to be able to do the movements, but my mind was still stuck. But what caught my attention was this energetic punch that he gave me. And Mr. Moy would teach punching and different martial techniques and stuff, but there were certain incidences that happened that made him realize that a lot of people didn't understand this energetic transference, all this stuff that was going on. So he discouraged us from doing those kind of things just so people wouldn't get hurt until we understood what was going on. And one really good example that made this really clear to me as how risky this kind of thing was what I call my pillow punching story. And I had gone up to Red Deer to teach, and one of my instructors from Calgary would come up once a month. And this one time he came up, and he was, sort of a kung fu guy, and he really, was into the martial arts and the, building the energy and all this kind of stuff. And so he wanted to try out a full power Tai Chi punch. And so what we devised, or what he devised, was that I would hold all these couch cushions out in front of me, and I would have all these pillows as far out as I could reach and hold out in front. And so what he did was he was going to come in with a full power punch. And me, okay, I'm going to learn something really cool here. So I'm standing there, and he just winds up and he comes in and he punches as hard as he could. And I feel this punch come in through the pillows, and it hit my body, and it got stuck. And immediately I dropped the pillows, and I could feel this ball inside myself starting to expand. And he said I just went completely pale, and I felt like something inside me was just going to explode. And whether it was a divine energetic intervention or whether he just all of a sudden had presence of mind, I don't know what, but he lines me up into a Toyu stance and got me stretched out. And as soon as I relaxed into that, I could feel this movement inside my body, spun around, and then it spiraled down my back leg out into the floor, and immediately it was gone, and color returned, and all of a sudden I felt better. And the thing with that is a lot of people play around with this raw energy, and Mr. Moy would talk about that raw energy is something you don't want to be circulating through your body, and you want to be able to refine that energy and open up the body, because if the body's not open up, that energy will get stuck. So for me, when he's punching, all of a sudden my mind stopped. My mind got stuck with that energy coming in, but my body was open enough to be able to let it go. And so Mr. Moy was constantly talking about things like letting go. And there's some cool stories we'll share with you down the road here about how Mr. Moy would express that. But the thing is you want to be very careful when you're playing around with that kind of energy until you're able to refine it. And again, back to the book, Practical Taoism, they sort of simplify how we go about refining that. And Mr. Moy, in a very subtle way, would talk about it. And it's not necessarily through techniques There are some techniques working with the Tai Chi that help to open up the body and allow the energies to move properly through the body. But that's not with trying to visualize or trying to force that energy to move through. So when you're trying to force it, that's a raw energy you're trying to move, and it's not good for the body. After a few years of practicing, I'd noticed that as I was teaching, I would feel what was going on in my students' bodies. So I'd be watching them practice, and I could feel what was moving, what was happening, where things were stuck, and I was able to make corrections and adjustments for them, just what they needed, it would seem. You know, very little things, very subtle things, but it would make a difference. It would help them. And I couldn't quite understand that as to, okay, how is it that I can feel what's going on there? And one of the things that I remember Mr. Moy talking about was to be very cautious about how you mix your energies. So, you know, in feeling other people's bodies, you want to be cautious about that kind of thing, touching. He would often caution us about not to touch our students. And in fact, he would quite often use a pen or a pencil or a ruler or a coat hanger sometimes to make adjustments to people's bodies. Very rarely would he ever actually touch and move somebody himself, like physically. You know, a lot of these experiences in watching how he would use objects to correct and adjust, and helped me to understand, like eventually, things like the stories that we told earlier about the girl with the goiter, and the fellow that was trying to imitate Mr. Moy's energy movement exercises, and how he made himself sick. And Mr. Moy, in both these cases, just seemed to be able to perceive and understand what was going on with those people, so that he could just step in and do exactly what was needed. You can't fake that. You can't, you know, I don't know how he perceived it. I don't know how whether he saw things visually or whether he felt things or whatever, but he was just able to know what was going on. Another incident that I had was where I'm demonstrating brush knees to a classroom, and as I'm demonstrating and as I'm going through the movements, I can hear them asking questions. And as I'm showing them the moves, I looked over and I could see that they weren't saying anything. They weren't talking, but I could hear these questions. And I thought this was kind of strange, but I figured, well, I'm going to play with this. And so after I demonstrated the move, I thought I would answer their questions. So I would look at each one and answer the question that I thought they were asking. And later on, they came up to me, a couple of them came up to me and said, "How did you know that that was what I was going to ask you? And you just answered the question and you just knew what I was asking." And I said, "Well, just lucky, I guess." And I didn't want to tell them that I'd heard them. I mean, that would be just weird. And so, again, another energetic enigma. But these experiences, again, helped me to understand that there was something more going on. And as I watched Mr. Moy do these things, I could see that there was something more going on other than just physically exercising. And so this kind of stuff, you know, Mr. Moy would quite often caution us to understand what we're doing, understand with what's going on with our bodies, understand the form, and not to mess around with it. You know, there was, you know, lots of incidents that he had said. People would be practicing strange things or trying to modify the form. And really, he would say, don't mess with the form. And there was some instances where people would come in to the practice hall, and you know, they would be doing these weird things. They'd be shaking, and they would be stomping and doing things that, you know, just really seemed strange to me. And so I'd asked Mr. Moy about these things one time, and he said, those kind of practices and a lot of techniques that people play with, they actually affect the body in a negative way, so that they end up making you sick. And it could be mentally sick, like schizophrenia and different things like that, or physically ill, where your energy is stuck in your body, and energetically ill, where your energy is just messed up and all over the place. And a lot of this has to do with our thinking processes and how we think things are supposed to be done, rather than just simply allowing things to move in a natural manner, which is what the Tai Chi is all about. And I mean, there's one instance that I recall is when I first started, I was told about this fellow that was coming and practicing Tai Chi, and he was a hard stylist. He was a kung fu, karate kind of guy, and he would do, you know, all the heavy duty, what do you call it, tension exercises. So he would be doing sit-ups and push-ups and all kinds of tension type stuff. But he wanted to learn the Tai Chi, so that it would supposedly improve his martial arts ability. So after a while of practicing, he ended up getting sick one day, and they had to rush him to the hospital, and turned out he had internal bleeding. And so they couldn't figure out what was going on, but he came back to the club and started practicing, and within a short period of time, down on the floor, sick again, and off to the hospital, and again, internal bleeding. So he was thinking maybe there was something wrong with this Tai Chi, because he'd never had this happen before. And so he'd come back, he was going to try it one more time, and his instructor said that he would watch what he was doing, make sure, you know, there's nothing wrong with his form, or if there was, they would make some adjustments, and maybe they could, you know, see what was going on. So they'd start practicing, they'd be doing their warm-ups and go through the movements, and then they take a break, and he zips over to the side of the room and starts doing crunches. And apparently he would do like 50 crunches on each break, and the instructor said, "Whoa, you can't do that." And what was happening was he would be loosening and opening up his body, and then he would tighten it all up. And then he would loosen up his body, and then he would tighten it all up. And what was happening is internally he was ripping himself apart and causing this internal bleeding. So he was told that you had to do one or the other, and you had to decide what you were going to do. And so what he decided, I'm not sure. I would like to assume that he picked the better of the options and did Tai Chi, but whatever, that was his choice. But it was a very early on awareness of what you wanted to be doing, with feeling your body, paying attention to what you're doing with your body, and how the things that we're thinking about affects our actions, and how we're engaging in the world. And so, some things to think about, some things to help you expand your awareness on your Tai Chi, and sort of start to get an understanding of the energetic movements and the energetic aspects of the Tai Chi and of us as human beings. Well, that's it for now. If you want to discover and look into some more of this stuff, we're going to be offering some coaching sessions through Skype. And we'll also be putting more stuff through videos and online. So be sure to subscribe, stay tuned for more. And now, memories of Mr. Moy. Mr. Moy would come around to the clubs, and he did lots and lots of workshops, and at every workshop people would be asking him questions about things about the Tai Chi and about him. And at this one particular workshop, we had gathered around, and people were asking him questions, and his translator was translating everything. And there was some questions asked that he responded to that was very interesting. I found very curious, and it even caused his translator to have a pause and a little bit of a questioning look. And I don't remember what the question was, but his response was that when he came to Canada, when he came here, he could have chosen anything to teach what he wanted to teach, but he chose Tai Chi. And when his translator translated that for us, she looks at him, it's kind of this surprised look as if, well, wow. And so the question is, what was it he was wanting to teach us if not Tai Chi? And even though he built this huge organization teaching Tai Chi and internal arts, he used that in order to teach. So after hearing that, it caused me to pay a little bit more attention to what he was doing and what he was teaching and how he was teaching, and to pay more attention to what was going on for me that may be beyond this Tai Chi thing. And there's always these energetic enigmas that are going on. There are different unexplained things that happen to us, not only with the Tai Chi, but just unusual things that are very difficult to explain. And maybe you've had some things happen like that, and we'd love it if you would share those with us and make a comment. And for now, keep practicing, and see you later.